Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Laws of Physical Evidence, hosted by our chiropractor in the Laws of Life Network, Dr. David Lipman. How are you, Dr. Lipman?
Good morning. Nice to be here on this beautiful day in South Florida. Thanks for having me again, Blanca.
It is always my pleasure and honor because you're always teaching us so much how to stay healthy, how to stay fit, how to take care of our bodies. So, what is your law for today?
Well, today the law kind of transcends both I'll say the rehabilitative world as well as the fitness world. And that is when it comes to those things, maintenance when it comes to fitness doesn't exist. Either you're growing or you're degenerating. There really is no third direction. And when you think about it on a larger scale, nothing really stays the same ever. There's always growth or degeneration, happening to all things in our bodies and in our world around us too. So the way I kind of came upon that law is that I remember for years, especially people in the gym would say, I'm just, I'm not working out to get big. I just want to maintain. Well, as I saw that concept play out, I realized that there really isn't any such thing as maintenance. And it really gave me hope, both from a standpoint as a practitioner to help with people with injuries, which always have some weaknesses or imbalances at their very core. And the idea that, you can continue to get stronger as you age. Who says that we have to, believe that after 40 or after 50, you're just going to maintain? I mean, I don't believe that. And in fact, our bodies really don't work that way. However, that leads to the opportunity for people to know that if that is going to happen, if they're going to have ascending fitness, if they're going to have true resolution to back pain or shoulder pain or whatever it is that they've been suffering from for a long time, there has to be a progression that continues where they're able to get stronger and stronger, get those weaknesses and imbalances sorted out, and be able to continue to move in that direction. So not only they help resolve the pain syndrome and the dysfunction, but they can actually perform at higher levels as time goes on and as life goes on. So that's what I had always believed. And as I've grown in my own walk with my own injuries and treating thousands of people, I'm able to see how that plays out for those that are really believing that, want to believe that, and invest in that too.
That's really important. And I think that's what sets you apart as a chiropractor is because you do spend a lot of time educating the client. And the client has to know what's happening in order to really help themselves at the most optimal levels, correct?
Absolutely. Again, I've said this on some of the previous casts that, I'm the one that walks around in this body. You walk around in that body. People walk around in their own body. So it becomes our responsibility to learn enough about what needs to be done to maintain the continued, improvements, let's say, especially when quality of life has been lost by some kind of, acute or chronic injury, which again, in my world, I'm seeing it every day. And so I've been really motivated personally from my own experiences with injury and being debilitated. And of course, being able to take those experiences and the education I've gotten from those and bring them to other people to help them, get through the things that, I've also been exposed to. So it's helped me develop and see some of these truths that, we call these laws of physical evidence. They're things that I've learned over time and see them consistent enough to know like what these truths are and how they kind of frame out to create a process for each one of us to be able to, self-manage, the body that we've been given. We only have one.
That is so true. We only get one, and there's no refunds, no exchanges, no returns of any kind.
That's right. So one of the things that, again, in the idea of there's no such thing as maintenance, I'm going to put a reflection and an observation I've made for many years. I've been around the commercial health club since the 1970s when I was a teenager. And so I've seen a lot of the same things occur again and again. And that is, there are many people that when they go to the gym, they go through their same routine each and every time. Sometimes it might be a few machines. Maybe there's some variety in there, maybe there's not. But what I've realized, and you see those people, they don't really change much. And it's not from an aesthetic standpoint, is that they're kind of lifting the same weights. And what really that does, I mean, God bless them for being consistent and showing up. But they become those tasks or the tasks of daily activity, which is whatever we do on a regular basis on a daily activity, our bodies are always getting more efficient at that. So there's no more stimulation for change or growth if that's all we're doing. If we're presenting those same activities, even people that, let's say, walk for exercise, if they're not changing the speed, or, the distance or somehow the pace, the body becomes very efficient. I mean, that's how our bodies work to even get stronger. The body's always trying to preserve and become more efficient at motion and movements to preserve energy. Because, years ago, we didn't have, grocery stores to get food and so on. And most, for centuries, we had to gather our own or, grow our own. And so our bodies really did adapt to having less than. What it hasn't adapted to is having more than we need. And that's where a lot of health problems come up, these days. But the efficiencies that our body have by doing the same tasks again, whereas let's say I'm going to do a particular exercise, maybe I'll burn 50 calories the first time I do it. The next time probably only take 30. And if I'm continuing to do that, it probably takes 10 eventually. So the idea is that you have to constantly challenge your body in order to stimulate the change of growth. Because I don't know about you people, but I would rather be growing as I go through life. I don't want to degenerate. So that is the reason behind, today's physical evidence law of there not being a real maintenance. You're either breaking down or you're building up. So I wanted to show some examples of exercises and taking certain exercises from the simplicity of doing them sort of as a foundational and a basic and getting on to higher levels of difficulty to, again, continually stimulate change. So Blanca, let's pull up the single leg raise and show that video just to show that progression.
The single leg hip bridge is a step up from doing double legs. What's great about this is that it forces the body to move equally on both sides in terms of the kinetic chain on the left and the right sides of the body. So when you're able to exercise them separately, it helps to develop the stability, mobility, and function of each side separately so they work better together. Now, taking it a step up from flat single legs or double leg hip bridge, using a stability ball, you can now increase the firing of those stabilizing muscles to now not just extend the hip, but help to stabilize and balance the entire spine all the way from the heels of the feet to the shoulders that are on the ground. So now all of that space in between on both the left and the right side of the body is working hard to stabilize and work symmetrically. Now, once you've developed the ability to do the double leg hip bridge on the stability ball effectively, the next step was to be to start using a single leg on the same situation. So now you're really challenging the single leg on each side and that kinetic chain to be very, very stable and balanced and strong to be able to extend the hip on a single leg with a stability ball. Again, tapping into the fact that the more instability you create, the more stability the body has to find on its own. So as a progression going from double leg hip bridges to single leg on the floor, then to double leg on the stability ball, and then to single leg stability ball bridges, you help to build that progression of mobility, stability, and function throughout both the left and the right side of the body.
Yeah, so again, just to illustrate that principle, trying to constantly have a progression of improvements in, fitness and function is really key to be able to, continue on beyond the idea of, maintenance, but really to continually stimulate growth, improvements in strength, function, and stability. Because the fact is that if we're not doing that, we are going in the other direction. And so it really becomes our responsibility to really have a path to focus on. And there's so many wonderful ways and techniques. And in our next show next week, I'm going to give some pointers of some things that I actually was exposed to very young in terms of being able to sort of measure intensity levels of exercise and be able to ensure that each time I'm doing a certain workout or exercise, that I'm stimulating myself beyond what I did last time. So I'm going to highlight that in our next show. But today, I wanted to also offer something in another very common exercise. One of the common exercises, probably the most common exercise for the abdominal wall, is the sit-up or the crunch. Now, the crunch is taking advantage of the fact that we're taking the abdominal wall, which connects from the ribs to the pelvis. And in the case of the normal crunch or sit-up, we're stabilizing this end where this attachment is, and we're bringing that end to it. So we're contracting the abdominal wall to create that, trunk flexion. Now, I've often looked at that and said, something, I think we can do this better. So years ago, I decided that the reverse crunch was a much better way to create that effect. So instead of stabilizing at the pelvis and bringing the ribs towards the pelvis, we stabilize this end and bring the other end up. And in the video, it'll explain to you why that is really a better, safer, and effective way to get that work done. Please cue that video.
The reverse crunch, in my opinion, is a more safe and effective way to do abdominal crunches. And the reason is in that with a traditional crunch, you're bringing the ribs towards the pelvis, which is where the abdominal wall connects, and you're asking rotational elements of the lower thoracic and upper lumbar spine to be flexing and extending, whereas the lower part of the lumbar spine, those joints are actually set up mechanically to do flexing and extending. So the reverse crunch becomes a safer and more effective way to get that done. And when you put a lumbar pad, you're able to increase that range of motion by first starting with a greater amount of spinal extension and having a greater amount of flexion to pull through for that abdominal wall to be worked.
Yeah, so again, just taking certain things that are very common and typical and making them a little bit better in terms of the challenge to the body itself. And it's funny, I've always, 100% of the time, it's never been 9 out of 10, it's always 10 out of 10 when I take somebody that's been trying to strengthen their abs, as they say it, and they're trying to, get that tension, whether it's going for the aestheticness of a six-pack or just having that core strength. Anytime somebody does a reverse crunch for the first time, especially with that lumbar pad, they feel it like they've never felt it before. But the cool part is that you really get stronger much faster using that element and making that traditional exercise even better and more safe and effective for the body.
I love it. I love it. And these are very easy exercises that people can do at home.
Absolutely. Most of these things that I have found are things that I sort of first developed, first at home, not necessarily in a gym with some kind of high-tech equipment, but just really focusing on the body machine and, really making that because the body is what's exercising. Sometimes I think it could be distracting to that when you're exercising on let's say a gym machine, you're focusing on the machine and what the machine's doing rather than focusing on what this machine's doing. And this is the only machine that really matters. And when you can take that inward focus through exercise, it's much more effective, and you become more aware of your body, which is also helpful because so many people that come in with injury, they have a disconnect between, the physicality of their body and their mind, and getting that mind-body connection really helps to improve the function of the body, even when it comes to, resolving injury and things like that too.
Does it help you as a doctor when your customers prime the body more with these at-home exercises?
Yeah, so the way I present it to them is that the homework I give them to follow up and, take what we've done in the office, which is basically helping to restore, as normal the mechanics as possible. Because again, we don't treat pain here, we treat the dysfunction that causes it. So in that correction of the dysfunction, then I tell them, now take this baby out for a spin and use it better now. And it reinforces the changes because the body must get used to controlling those improvements in range of motion and stability and function in order to maintain those changes. Because otherwise, whatever's caused it, if it wasn't a single injury, but something that happens every day that you don't think about, that just kind of winds you up tight and gets you all twisted up, especially, these days with so many people still working from home, it's important to really have people do those things to reinforce those changes and keep them that way just to have a countermeasure to the stressors that, we're all going through each and every day. And it is a daily chore because, gravity's always here. So it's always, wear and tear in us in one way or the other. So we need to have a process to kind of minimize those, affects, from a positive standpoint, of course. But anyway, I wanted to just really put into people's minds. And also I would just ask if anybody thinks this information is important and you might know somebody that could benefit from it, please like the video and share it where you're able to on your social media, because my hope is that, the information here can really reach people that it can really benefit from, it.
I love it. I think this is super important information. And Dr. David Lipman, we are so grateful for all you're doing to educate us about the laws of physical evidence. You can also find Dr. Lipman at physicalevidencechiropractic.com. You can also call his office at 561-674-1217, or take a picture of that QR code and all the links will populate right into your Safari, and you can connect with him that way as well. So Dr. Lipman, thank you so much for another great episode of the Laws of Physical Evidence. And we will see you back here every Thursday at 11 a.m.
Great. Thanks again, Blanca. See you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.